So when you start thinking about the fiat system, most people think of it as two completely diametrically opposed systems, right? One is transparent, decentralized, open source, programmatic, etc., and the other is basically the exact opposite. Is that your general read on the two systems, or do you have some sort of kind of more nuance to the comparison?
There's a lot to the comparison. So I think the perhaps the most powerful tool is when you try and think about how mining works in fiat. So in Bitcoin, we know that the miners solve the proof of work problems, and then they get issued new coins, and there's a schedule for how many coins they get. In gold, we know that you mine gold by digging into the ground and then refining it. But in fiat, if you ask yourself how is fiat mined, it's a very deep rabbit hole. And when you start thinking about it and start thinking about the significance in terms of, just think about how much of a big deal mining Bitcoin is. And then you you apply that to fiat, and you can see why lending is such a big deal. Because the way that mining fiat works is through lending. When you go to the bank and you ask them for $1 million so you can buy a house, the bank isn't taking $1 million that somebody else had deposited in that bank and giving them to you. The bank is mining essentially new fiat. So if they can get you to borrow, they get to make new fiat money. That's the equivalent of solving a proof of work problem. It's finding a lender, finding a borrower who wants to borrow and who fulfills the criteria for borrowing, and then being able to issue the loan that allows them to make more money. When you think about it this way, the fiat system begins to make a lot of sense. So that's why everybody's in debt. That's why in fiat, no matter how much money you get, you just keep rolling it over into bigger and bigger debt. People don't make money so that they can pay off their debts. People make money so that they can take on bigger debts. So individuals are in debt, corporations are in debt, governments are in debt at all levels, municipal and national and everything. Everybody needs to get in debt, because when you get in debt, if you wanted to buy the house with cash, if you just had a house and you wanted to buy it with cash, well, that's, let's say, $1 million house. But if you're able to get it with a mortgage, then the bank is going to effectively make $800,000 out of thin air. You'll put up, say, 20,000, 200,000 up front, but then the bank managed to make 800,000. So they can cut you a sweet deal here, because it's not like you're taking up, it's not like you're taking up their capital. They just get to make new capital. So if buying a house can be used as a way to mine fiat, it's going to be very profitable for the miner, and they'll cut you in on that. And that's why it makes sense for everybody to buy their houses in debt. Everybody buys their houses and their major expenses. You get into debt and you get a better deal than if you pay cash, because obviously, over time, the value of the money declines and the value of the repayment of the loan continues to decline.
So when you think about, let's talk nation state debt versus individual debt and corporate debt, there's different players in the market that are all taking on debt. Is it fair to say it's all the exact same structure? So the government takes on debt because they're going to be able to pay it off with cheaper dollars in the future, same as the individual buying that house or some other good. Is that kind of a fair way to categorize it in your opinion?
I mean, it's not exactly the same, because it depends on your credit worthiness and it depends on your political connections. And so the issue here, of course, is that this isn't an advanced and fair system like Bitcoin, where anybody can solve the proof of work problems and get rewarded. And the only way to guarantee that you can make more solutions for the proof of work is to mine more efficiently and have more miners and have more electricity. Well, in fiat, it doesn't quite work that way. In order to mine fiat, basically, you need to be well connected to the Federal Reserve, to the government, to the central bank in whatever country you're in. And the way it works is government obviously gets to borrow at the lowest rate, because government has the advantage of being able to tax and inflate the currency to pay off the debt. So therefore, you'll see that they get to borrow at the lowest rate everywhere, and then everybody else's interest rate will be a little bit higher. So effectively, people are mostly probably familiar with the term the Cantillon effect. And the Cantillon effect refers to the fact that when you print new money, the recipients of the new money benefit at the expense of the people who were holding the old money. And the people who receive it earlier benefit the most. And then as the money trickles through the rest of the economy, the benefits decline. And then the people who receive it later don't even benefit from it. They are hurt. from the inflation that it causes. So in the case of fiat, the way the Cantillon effect is essentially the way that the Cantillon effect works is essentially through interest rate. People who get lowest interest rates on their debt benefit, and so that's government and the biggest borrowers in society, which are primarily the biggest financial institutions and banks, and then the bigger corporations that can borrow from the banks at the lowest interest rates. But then, as you move forward, as you move towards, the hoi polloi and the peasants, the interest rates go up, and you are effectively missing out on the benefits of this. You're not being able to catch up with inflation. And if you think about inflation in terms of CPI, then you could get the impression that a lot of people are able to keep up with inflation. But of course, that's entirely dependent on the kind of goods that you include in the CPI, and that does not include the desirable goods that are highly competitive because they're rare. You can't have Miami Beach real estate and Manhattan real estate in the CPI because that's always going up much faster than the CPI. And the best healthcare, the best medicine, all of the things that are very scarce by their nature because they're very high quality, all of these things are rising at a much faster pace than the CPI. And so the only people who can keep up are the ones who are the best connected. So essentially government and the big banks and the people who run these things.